Wow, look. Those big round eyes. True that. It's been years since I've seen a baby this close. Just looking at her is so soothing. Babies really are wonderful, aren't they?
My sister, Emily, had given birth, and my in-laws insisted on seeing the baby, coming all the way from afar. The baby, being cradled by Emily, was sleeping soundly at the center of attention.
You're being such a good girl today, not crying. I wonder what kind of adult you'll grow into. Ah, babies are great. Why don't we have one, huh, Linda?
Inside the room, filled with warm sunlight, I harbored swirling emotions that were mine alone.
Well, babies are a blessing, you know. All right, let's start trying for a baby. I want a child too.
The moment I heard this, I slowly stood up. All eyes in the room turned to me. Eh? Aren't you already a dad to this little one? All eyes then shifted to the baby. My name is Linda. I turned 41 this year. Currently, I work part-time at a deli in a shopping mall close to our home. My husband, Michael, is 2 years older than me and works as a long-haul truck driver for a transport company, spending most of his days on the road. He comes home maybe once or twice a week. We both prefer not to be too involved with each other, so I rarely feel lonely. At least, that's what I tell myself. The only thing that makes me feel lonely is the fact that we don't have children. It's not that we never wanted them. In our 20s, just married, we thought it was just a matter of timing and youth. But as I entered my 30s, the absence of children started to feel more pressing, and we even tried some of the then uncommon fertility treatments. I was getting anxious about not seeing results, but Michael felt differently. If nothing comes of it after all this time, what's the point in continuing? Maybe, but if we keep trying, it might work out. I'm tired from work, and spending my days off at the hospital is just depressing. I'm healthy, Linda. Maybe the problem is with you? After that, Michael stopped going to the treatments. Honestly, we weren't exactly flush with cash. Feeling resentful of Michael's words, I gradually stopped going to the hospital too.
Good morning, you're up early. Good morning. I just woke up early, couldn't get back to sleep.
The lady who greeted me while I was taking out the trash lived on the floor below. We've been living in this apartment complex for almost 20 years, and she's been here even longer. Not just her, but many of the residents have lived here for a long time. Maybe that's why the age group here is on the older side, but everyone's nice and there's never any neighborhood trouble. If there's any trouble, it's within the home. I muttered to myself, unheard by anyone. When I was younger, I dreamt of spending all my time with him. But now, the only relief I have is when Michael is away at work. While our relationship isn't bad on the surface, after over 20 years of marriage, our conversations have dwindled. Plus, we both naturally avoid talking about children. Then one afternoon, the doorbell rang.
Hey sis, it's Emily.
Come in, welcome. Standing at the door was my sister, Emily, 5 years my junior. I started dating Michael and moved in with him around the time Emily graduated from high school and left our family home. Our family home isn't too far from where we live. Our mother moved into a nursing home, and since then, our father, George, has been living alone. Ever drop by to see Dad? No, I've been too busy to go back home. Dad hardly ever answers the phone. He's probably doing fine though. Typical Dad. He may not be good with words, but I bet he's feeling lonely. You visit him often enough, so it's fine, isn't it? You really do whatever you please, don't you? Our father, George, has always been a workaholic and quite reserved with everyone. He used to leave all the household chores to Mom. Now, he can manage his daily needs, at least. But right after Mom passed away, I was so worried about Dad that I used to visit our family home every day.
Hey, Dad. Here's your food for tomorrow morning and lunch. You can microwave it in the container. I've folded the laundry, so just put it away yourself. Oh, and…
Dad never said much, but I kept visiting, resigning myself to his ways. Michael's parents, on the other hand, live far away in a place where snow piles up to an adult's height in winter. They're much more sociable than my dad and often come to visit us. By the way, I still have some persimmons my mother-in-law brought over last time. Want some? Nah, I'm good for now. There's a drama I want to watch today, so I'll head back before evening. I'll take the persimmons with me. Okay, I'll get them ready for you. Michael's parents sure do visit a lot, considering the distance. Mom loves the city life. She's thrilled just going around the shopping mall with us. I remember you two went out together last month. I'm lucky to have a good relationship with my in-laws. We can talk about anything. Well, I want to stop by the convenience store on my way home, so I should get going. Be careful, it gets dark early these days. Don't sound like Mom. We're both old enough, you know. When's your next day off? Let's go to that new cafe near the station. I think I'm off this Saturday. All right, I'll get in touch. Emily checked her schedule on her smartphone. She lives just a couple of bus stops away. She often comes over to our place for dinner, saying she's too lazy to cook. She even has her own pillow here since she frequently ends up staying the night.
Oh, right, sis. I'm pregnant. What? What do you mean?
Her unexpected announcement caught me off guard.
You know those dating apps? They're actually kind of fun. I met someone I really clicked with about a year ago. One thing led to another, and when I went to the doctor because I wasn't feeling well, they told me I'm 3 months pregnant.
Emily spoke with a laugh here and there.
Is he a decent guy?
I don't know if you'd approve, but he's a good person. She sounded a bit subdued. Maybe she felt guilty about meeting someone through a dating app. Anyway, congratulations.
Is that the right thing to say?
Sorry for being happy before you.
No, don't worry about it.
I felt a sting in my heart but hid my feelings, thinking I should be happy for Emily's joy. Let me know if you need anything, okay? Thanks, I'll count on you. As Emily opened the door to leave, a swirl of mixed feelings churned inside me. I should be happy for her, I reminded myself. When Michael came home, I told him about Emily's pregnancy.
What? Pregnant? Emily is? Whose child?
Someone she met on a dating app. I haven't met him yet.
I see. Well, that's certainly something to celebrate.
Michael sat down on the sofa, finished his beer, and turned to me.
But why don't we have such happy news in our home? What? You're bringing this up now? It's your fault for stopping the treatment, isn't it? I'd like to hold my own child too. You were the first to quit the treatment. Don't blame me. There's nothing wrong with my health.
I do envy people with kids. It seemed in Michael's eyes, I was the only one at fault. I felt irritation towards him and frustration at ourselves for not being able to share and overcome our problems as a couple. Since then, Michael frequently made snide remarks about us not having children.
If I had a child, I'd secretly watch them run errands.
He would openly express his admiration while watching TV shows featuring children. Once, he even bought a book about fertility treatments and threw it at me.
I paid for the book with your money.
Make sure you read it thoroughly. Is it fair to be harassed like this just because we can't have children? To distract myself, I started helping Emily more often. With cleaning, shopping, and cooking.
Sorry, sis, the morning sickness has been terrible. It's okay.
Emily's place was always messy whenever I visited, and her meals seemed to consist mostly of store-bought deli food or instant ramen. Being pregnant is tough. Everything tires you out more.
Oh, sorry.
I guess you wouldn't know, not having a baby. Emily sometimes tried to one-up me, often exaggerating the difficulties of pregnancy. Yet, she didn't seem to be focusing on getting the right nutrition for the baby or preparing for after the birth. I occasionally tried to advise her, but it didn't seem to make much of an impact. Emily's child was growing well, but I had one major concern. I had never seen the man who would be her husband.
Have you thought about introducing him to Dad?
It seems like he got a promotion or something, and he's often away on business trips. Greetings seem old-fashioned, so I thought it might be fine to skip them. Okay. Let me know when you can. Yeah. With that, Emily abruptly ended the conversation as if declaring the topic closed. I had other thoughts, but chose not to pry further. It wasn't the right time. Time passed, and Emily gave birth to a boy. She hesitated to tell our father. She and Dad never talked much. Dad might get mad, saying things should be done in a certain order. Really? He was quite accepting when I told him. After much urging from me, Emily finally called to inform him. Despite her worries, Dad simply responded with his usual lack of emotion, "I see." Michael's parents, on the other hand, were overjoyed when I told them about Emily's childbirth, celebrating as if it was their first grandchild.
Hey, Linda, we'd like to send a gift. Would that be okay?
They sent Emily congratulatory gifts through Michael, diaper cakes, bibs, baby clothes, and more. Unable to hold back, they eagerly hoped to meet the baby, if Emily wouldn't mind. Michael's parents want to see the baby. Why? It's none of their business. They gave you a lot of gifts, right? It wouldn't hurt to meet them. Initially reluctant, Emily eventually gave in. I arranged for everyone to meet at my house, and the celebration began surrounded by an abundance of food ordered by Michael's parents.
Look at those big round eyes. It's been years since I've seen a baby up close.
Michael's parents were incredibly excited. Michael, who was also present, seemed ready to enjoy the gathering.
Ah, babies are great. Why don't we have one, Linda? Well, babies are a blessing.
Even so, not being able to get pregnant for nearly 20 years, I wonder if there's something wrong with you. That's not true.
Right, let's try for a baby again. I want one too.
I slowly stood up as he said this. All eyes turning to me.
What? But you're already this child's father, aren't you?
I pointed to the baby Emily was holding, now sleeping peacefully. The room fell into an astonishing silence. Emily was the first to speak, laying the baby down and glaring at me.
What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. You've gone crazy because you can't have kids? That's right. My child? Are you saying Emily and I had an affair? Ridiculous.
Michael's parents watched the exchange, confused.
I get it. You're trying to make up some story to claim the baby as your own. It's shameful to frame your sister like this. Exactly. You've always been like this. Blaming others. Maybe it's your fault we don't have kids.
Michael's mother tried to intervene, but I took out my smartphone.
I decided not to trust you too when I saw this.
The smartphone screen displayed Emily's home. I showed them the accumulated photos one after another. There were photos of Michael leaving her place and the two of them embracing passionately. Michael and Emily, who had just been insulting me, were speechless and turned pale. This photo was taken 3 years ago.
Why do you have such a thing?
When Emily stayed over, you seemed unusually excited, Michael. And Emily, you were too close to him. I was worried.
That was just normal.
I learned a few days before I took this photo from the old lady downstairs. She said she heard a woman's voice, thought someone was home. Odd, since I was just returning from my part-time job.
That could have been a mistake. Maybe she heard the TV.
Oh, you said you were at work that day, but you were home, Michael. At first, I thought you were seeing another woman. I didn't want to believe it, but decided to track your smartphone's GPS to be sure. You had no right to do that. Then I found out you were at Emily's place. That alone wasn't enough evidence, and I couldn't bring myself to go there. So I asked someone to take these photos. The shock of seeing those photos was almost suffocating. But my anger and determination overcame it.
I've been watching you too, knowing the truth. Did you think you were not being caught? I gathered plenty of evidence. So you doubted my pregnancy announcement?
It was a shock. I wanted it to be a lie. But Emily, you always avoid eye contact and flee when you lie. You did the same when I asked about the father.
What are you talking about?
The atmosphere in the room was heavy. I felt a tremendous pressure. But I couldn't back down now. This had to be resolved today, or I'd regret it forever.
This is a lie, a mistake.
Michael, did you betray Linda? My father-in-law's voice trembled. And my mother-in-law looked ready to cry. I felt sorry for involving them but needed witnesses. The house had turned into a battlefield. When suddenly the front door burst open. It was my father. With heavy footsteps, my father marched in confidently and headed straight towards Emily.
Dad!
His face was red with anger.
Emily! You! What? It's none of your business, Dad. Still saying that after all this? I saw and heard you two with my own eyes and ears. What are you talking about? I don't know anything about that. I was the one who took the photos. Linda came to me in tears, asking for help. I tracked you two instead of her. I had tracked their movements with GPS and wanted to capture them in a photo as definitive proof. But doubt crept in. Should I really expose the truth? Or pretend nothing happened and continue as before? In my dilemma, I turned to my father. My stubborn father listened to me empathetically. The way he faced the mistakes his own daughter had made was incredibly reassuring. He offered to help me by capturing the situation firsthand, instead of me doing it. Don't meddle in unnecessary matters. In front of the entrance, you two were talking loudly. I could hear everything clearly from a distance. Do you remember what you were talking about? I don't remember every little thing. You said, I can't stand that only Linda gets to be happy, and Michael said, I love you more than Linda. I want to break up with her and be with you instead. If you want to hear it in your own voices, I recorded it on my phone.
My usually quiet father was unable to contain his anger.
I too wanted to be happy about having a grandson. But when I heard the truth from Linda, I felt more ashamed than anything. Children can't choose their parents. When this child learns the truth, can you face him as a parent?
Seeing my father speak his mind brought me close to tears for the first time today. I tried to hide my watery eyes and turned back to Michael and Emily. My father started speaking in a resonating, calm voice.
Apologize now, Emily. Apologize sincerely. It's not too late to ask for forgiveness. Apologize from your heart, right here, right now. I don't know anything. It's not my fault.
Emily was flustered and backed into a corner by my father. Tears were streaming down her face, but I felt no sympathy.
Michael, where are you going?
I turned around to see Michael trying to sneak out, but my father-in-law caught him.
What kind of person are you?
My father-in-law, having caught Michael, forced him to apologize to me. Then, my father-in-law himself also apologized. Linda, I'm sorry. So sorry. His voice trembled differently than before. Next to my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, crying, apologized along with him. Michael seemed resigned and didn't resist.
Please lift your faces. Dad, calm down. The baby will wake up.
I took a deep breath and pulled out my final card from my bag. Our marriage is beyond repair. Michael, let's get a divorce. I put the divorce papers in front of Michael.
Divorce?
Yes. I can no longer trust you.
Isn't this an overreaction? It was just a fling.
Michael's face showed the most pitiful expression I had ever seen.
A fling? You're saying I was just a fling to you? I even had a baby because of this fling.
Emily, scolded by my father and betrayed by Michael, shouted in a face twisted with anger and sorrow.
I don't know anything about a baby. Is there even proof it's mine? It's definitely your child, Michael. There's no one else.
Under the pressure, both began to shed their pretenses.
Michael, you always talked about longing for children, yet now you reject this baby?
Well, that's... And Emily, why did you get involved with someone else's husband? Like Dad said earlier, I couldn't stand the idea of only you being happy. Isn't it true that you were desperate for attention, and the only one who showed interest was Michael? Blaming me made you feel less guilty. What do you know, just because you're married? Emily always had trouble keeping relationships for long. It wouldn't be surprising if she felt inferior to me. But that doesn't excuse her actions. After all, I had been betrayed for these 3 years. Sorry, but I've made up my mind. I'm going back to my parents' house. This way, you'll have what you want, your child and the baby. Isn't this what you wanted?
What about leaving? Who will do the housework then?
Obviously, Emily will. Right?
What? Why should I have to do that?
That's what Michael wants in a wife, isn't it? In the end, both of them remained unrepentant until the last. Perhaps their twisted nature made it easier for me to finally break away from them. Ignoring Michael's pleas, I grabbed my packed belongings and left the apartment with my father. Michael and Emily were left in a daze, while my in-laws continued to apologize. The day after returning to my parents' house, my father began packing up all of Emily's belongings left at home. Emily needs to know she doesn't have a place in her home anymore. He took the packed items to Emily's house, seemingly determined to set her straight, but returned sooner than expected. She wasn't there. A wasted trip. You must be tired. Shall I make some tea? I poured hot water from an old electric kettle into a teapot. Didn't you just not want to see her face? A parent always remains a parent, no matter what their child becomes. He looked me in the eyes as he spoke. You're still my proud child. Don't get all sentimental. You're too old for that. Feeling a bit embarrassed, I poured tea into his cup to change the subject. After leaving Emily's house, my father had also stopped by the apartment where I used to live. It was empty a day after the chaos, with no one around. He happened to meet a neighbor from the floor below. They told him that loud voices continued even after we left our home, and that my in-laws had come by later with apologies. I truly felt indebted to my in-laws. My divorce from Michael went smoothly, thanks to the help of my in-laws. I thought about alimony, but considering Michael's future, it seemed impossible for him to pay. I wanted to avoid causing any trouble for my in-laws. Without any constraints, Michael's life became disordered. Before our divorce, I managed all our finances. After the divorce, Michael, having control over his income, seemed to spend recklessly without self-control. He began to go out drinking every night and seldom returned to his apartment. Showing up to work hungover is not an option in the transport industry, and he was quickly fired. He tried to find another job, but repeated the same mistakes at a different transport company. Lacking the skills for another field, Michael eventually couldn't pay his rent and was evicted. Now, I don't even know where he is or how he's living. As for Emily, Michael's parents, concerned about the baby, offered to live with her. It must have been a tough decision for them, seeing as how she played a role in destroying their son's family. Yet, they reached out to her, concerned about the baby's future. But their kindness didn't resonate with Emily. Feeling uncomfortable after Michael's dismissal, she left the baby with them and left without a destination. The baby is now thriving under the care of my in-laws. I've been in touch with them even after the divorce. They are my source of information about Michael and Emily. Both abandoned their parental responsibilities, exploiting the kindness of others to escape their troubles. I contacted my in-laws partly to atone for the neglect of my ex-husband and his sister. The baby is innocent in all this. Through special adoption, the baby is now legally their child. While I'm no longer connected to the baby, my in-laws always welcome me with warmth. I now interact with them as friends, not just in-laws. Even though Michael is gone, they visit me as often as before. They say once you experience the fun of the city, it's hard to stop, they remark. I appreciate you coming all this way. I'll make sure you're well taken care of during your stay, I reply. I know they're considering my feelings and my dad's. I feel guilty for their long trips, but I'm grateful for their kindness. Someday, I'll have to tell the child the truth, but I believe we can overcome it with my understanding in-laws. My father is still quiet but seems a bit softer than before. He's even started helping with the baby. When my mother-in-law and I do the dishes, he quietly approaches the baby. He tries to hide it, but he's clearly smitten with the baby. Once, I caught him casually changing a diaper.
Wow, Dad, you can change diapers? That's surprising. What are you talking about? I've raised kids twice. This is a piece of cake.
Despite everything, it was probably my father who was the happiest to hear that Emily had a baby. I never asked him directly, but I could imagine him doing a victory pose in his heart, and I couldn't help but smile to myself as I watched him. I quit my previous part-time job and started working as a caregiver in the facility where my mother is staying. The job is tough, but I enjoy talking with many people, including my mother. Not all the problems I've faced have disappeared. But even so, I am happy now. I plan to find even more joy in life, enough to make up for the times I've missed out on.
My name is Florence, a homemaker in my late 20s. Currently, I live a peaceful life with my husband Reed and our daughter Betty. I used to work until Betty was born, but when Reed started his own company, I quit to help him with administrative tasks and accounting. Eventually, the company took off, and now it's performing quite well. Reed is calm and kind, very supportive both at work and home, making our married life very harmonious. After getting pregnant, I became a homemaker, thanks to the care from Reed and our employees. Raising a child had its tough moments, but with the help from Reed, my parents, and in-laws, and I managed somehow. Lately, it's become a routine for me to help my sister Stephanie at her house once a week. The reason is Stephanie is currently pregnant and almost due. Sorry to always ask for your help, Florence. Don't be silly. We're sisters. Just take care of yourself and the baby, Stephanie. Thank you. It's Stephanie's first pregnancy, so naturally, she's quite anxious. I remember feeling overwhelmed during my first pregnancy, but I got through it with support from those around me. I wanted to do as much as I could for my dear sister. Stephanie, 3 years younger than me, is the exact opposite of me, active yet very gentle and kind. That's why I was a bit worried about her, especially regarding her husband, Henry. When we first met, he seemed like a fine young man, and I was happy Stephanie found someone good. But later, I started sensing something off about Stephanie's smile. It seemed forced. As her sister, I could feel something was not right. I once tried to subtly ask her about it. How are things with Henry, Stephanie? Everything okay? Yeah, it's fine. We're managing. Really? Remember, you can talk to me if there's a problem. Yeah, thanks. I'm okay, really. I couldn't intervene in her marital matters, so I left it at that. Years later, when I heard from our mother that Stephanie was pregnant, I thought maybe I was overthinking. But I was about to learn that my concerns were not unfounded. A few weeks later, I happened to see Stephanie walking listlessly in town. Stephanie? Oh, Florence! What's wrong? You look pale. Just back from a doctor's visit. I think paleness is probably from morning sickness. You look so pale. Where's Henry? He's busy with work. I couldn't just leave Stephanie with her feeble smile, so I accompanied her to the hospital. After hearing the doctor's explanation that everything was progressing smoothly, I felt relieved. Since Stephanie had no other plans besides shopping that day, I decided to take her home. As soon as we got home, Stephanie apologized to me. Sorry for the trouble. It's no trouble at all. You should have used a taxi or called me if you felt unwell. Henry told me not to use a taxi because it costs money. What? Stephanie spoke with regret, but I felt a surge of anger. I decided to enter her house to hear more about it, and I was speechless. Stephanie has always been meticulous about keeping her room tidy since she was young, but her room was messier than I'd ever seen. Clearly, not with her things, but with Henry's clothes and trash. Hey, Stephanie, is Henry helping out? Like with house chores, especially when you're not feeling well? I wanted to help her somehow, so I gently held her hand and asked. Stephanie was silent at first. Then she began to cry. She shared about how kind Henry was during their dating period, how she hadn't thought about marriage until she met him, and how happy their newlywed life was. But she mentioned times when she made him angry, how she asked him to accompany her to the doctor's visits during her pregnancy, but he refused, citing to his busy work schedule. She stopped asking after making him angry once. That wasn't all. Apparently, Henry had many specific demands, like expecting her to wait up for him to return from work, even when she was suffering from severe morning sickness. He also insisted she cook at least 5 dishes for meals. On days she couldn't cook due to her condition, "You can't even do this, and you think you can be a mother?" he would berate her. "Having to make 5 dishes even when I'm exhausted? But I understand why he would be upset if there's no food ready after work. That doesn't give him the right to question your ability to be a mother." What was worse was how Henry would belittle her mothering skills whenever he was dissatisfied with her, making her anxious about her ability to raise a child. He would say things no pregnant wife should ever hear, like how unfortunate the child is to have a mother like her, how she's unfit for motherhood. His behavior was clearly not treating her as an equal, but as someone inferior. The more I heard, the more unreasonable Henry's actions seemed. "It's my fault I can't even do my household duties properly because of morning sickness. I can go to the hospital alone." "Earlier, you said it costs money to use a taxi. Did Henry tell you that?" "Yeah, once when the morning sickness was really bad, I couldn't walk to the doctor, so I used a taxi. I paid with the credit card he gave me, but then he said, 'Living off me and using my money for a taxi, you're living quite the life.'" Wow, really? That's harsh. But usually Henry is kind. He doesn't know much about morning sickness, so it's understandable. It varies from person to person. Even so, you're suffering from severe morning sickness. You're hardly eating, right? And all those dishes, they're all used by Henry, aren't they? Aren't you doing all the housework, Stephanie? Well, that's all I can do. I knew Stephanie cared deeply for Henry. Since the day they met, she said she'd never find anyone like Henry again. But this treatment was too much. I needed to figure out what to do, and then had an idea. "How about I come once a week to help you, Stephanie?" "Huh?" "Pregnancy stress can affect the baby, you know. I admire how you're managing the household considering Henry, but you're pushing yourself too hard. As your sister, I'm worried. I want to help, so you and your baby stay healthy." "But that'd be a burden on you, Florence." "Betty is growing up and goes to kindergarten now, so I have time. I'll talk to Reed about it. It's better to share your concerns than to bear them alone. What do you say?" Eventually, Stephanie agreed after my insistence. So I started visiting her once a week to help with chores, leave prepared meals, and accompany her to doctor's appointments. I met Henry a few times and greeted him with a smile. "Please take good care of Stephanie." He even thanked me for helping. When Stephanie was about to enter her final month, I casually spoke to Henry. "Henry." "What is it?" "Henry, Stephanie is entering her final month soon. It's just a month until the baby comes. She might be emotionally unstable, and it would be great if you could support her more." I'm sorry. Work's been really busy, but don't worry. Pregnancy isn't an illness, and everything's going fine at the hospital, right? I'm sorry to trouble you, Florence." "It's not about that. If it's difficult for you, I can come to help more. Or maybe she could stay at our parents' house?" "No, I'll take care of Stephanie. She chose not to go back to her parents for the birth, and I want to be nearby in case anything happens. Don't worry, Florence." His response didn't feel reassuring. It felt more like he was dodging the issue. Pregnancy isn't an illness, which means enduring the hardship and wishing someone would help. "Florence, thank you. I'm okay, really." Stephanie herself didn't seem to want to go back to her parents' house. Since I hadn't returned to my parents' house for my first childbirth either, I couldn't strongly insist. I hoped the couple would face this important issue regarding their child together, but I didn't feel it was my place to intervene in another family's matters. So I decided to just watch for now, unaware that I would later regret not being more assertive in offering help. Weeks passed, and my weekly visits to help Stephanie continued. But with her due date approaching, Reed and I were growing concerned. That day wasn't one of my scheduled visit days, but Reed, Betty, and I happened to be shopping near Stephanie's house.
What's wrong? You look worried.
Stephanie usually texts me around this time, but I haven't heard from her today.
Oh, you've been in daily contact?
Yes, ever since I started helping her, she'd update me on her condition and things that happened during the day. After the day I found Stephanie going to the hospital alone, I told her she could contact me about anything to distract her mind. Can I text you daily about what happened during the day? Like if the baby moves or something? Of course! Stephanie had smiled, and since then we had been in frequent contact, but I hadn't received any messages since yesterday. It was past noon, definitely a time she would be awake, so I was a bit worried. Is she okay?
Should we go check on her? It's getting cold. We can bring some caffeine-free drinks suitable for a pregnant woman. Maybe she and Henry just went out.
Is that okay?
Of course. Stephanie is an important sister-in-law to me. We're nearby anyway, right? Betty, you want to see Stephanie, don't you?
Yeah! Thank you. So, we decided to head to Stephanie's house. I tried contacting her before we went, but there was no reply. When we reached my sister's house, we rang the doorbell. After ringing it twice, there was still no sign of anyone coming to the door. Stephanie? I called out softly at the entrance, but there was no response. Perhaps they had gone out somewhere. Maybe they just went out. That's good. Sorry, Reed, Betty. I guess I was just overthinking. There was still no reply on my mobile phone. Probably out with Henry, I thought, believing that, as we left the entrance when a strong gust of wind blew. Wow, that's cold. Oh, the glove! At that moment, Betty's small glove was blown towards the entrance of the garage next to the entrance. Good thing it got caught by the wall. Make sure to keep it on tight, okay? Okay. Luckily, due to the direction of the wind, the glove stuck to the back door of the garage and was easy to retrieve. As I stood up, thinking we should head home for some warm drinks, I thought I heard someone and looked around. Of course, only Reed and Betty were there. Huh?
What's wrong?
I thought I heard a voice just now. Listening intently, I could indeed hear a faint moaning sound. Trying to locate the sound, I realized it was coming from behind the garage door. A bad feeling hit me. There's someone behind the garage door!
What?
A moaning sound, but in this house, it's only Stephanie and Henry. I didn't want to imagine who it could be if there was someone there. I quickly leaned against the door and called out. While tapping lightly on the door, I listened. Is someone there? Please answer if you are. A groaning sound was clearly heard from the other side of the shutter. I instantly recognized the familiar voice. Stephanie? Are you in there? Florence? Stephanie!
Florence, wait! I might be able to open this door.
Reed, by my side in panic, grabbed the door. With a heavy sound, the shutter slowly lifted. I also helped Reed lift the door from the side. Inside, Stephanie was lying on the ground. Immediately, Reed took out his mobile phone, and I rushed to her side. Betty watched, looking worried. Hugging Betty, I said, "It's okay," but I couldn't help worrying. Stephanie!
The ambulance will be here soon.
Reed called for an ambulance, and we covered Stephanie with our clothes. Her body, shivering in her house clothes, was unbelievably cold. I wondered how long she had been there. Stephanie, who was rushed to the hospital soon after, underwent various examinations. Fortunately, both mother and child were found to be safe and could return home once she settled down. Given the seriousness of the incident, we couldn't just stand by. We took Stephanie to my house to talk things through in detail. Calm now, Stephanie gave a self-deprecating laugh. It's pathetic, isn't it? Ending up like this. I'm sorry for causing trouble to you, Florence, and Reed, and for startling Betty. She began to share her story gradually. Henry was still not helping with anything. Worse, he would berate and yell at her almost daily when she couldn't manage the housework due to feeling unwell. Entering her final month of pregnancy, Stephanie's condition worsened. Sometimes when Henry scolded her, she would experience panic attacks. Common symptoms of panic attacks during the final month include palpitations, difficulty breathing, and dizziness, but especially for Stephanie, dizziness and palpitations were severe. Just yesterday, she stumbled in the kitchen and accidentally dropped a plate. The noise angered Henry, who was already in a bad mood.
What are you doing?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Stephanie immediately tried to clean up, but her severe dizziness only worsened the situation. Instead of cleaning, she ended up breaking more things, enraging Henry further.
Ah, shut up! Don't come near me! That's enough! Come here!
Stephanie was dragged into the garage and thrown onto the ground.
Shut up and sleep here tonight. I have an early business trip tomorrow. Reflect on this until the day after tomorrow.
Henry, wait! But her pleas were ignored, and she was left alone in the garage. Without her mobile phone, she couldn't call for help. Stephanie broke down crying as she spoke. We were filled with nothing but anger. How could a husband do this to his pregnant wife? It's unforgivable. I don't know what to do about Henry, Stephanie said through her tears. Seeing her like this was unbearable. It must be incredibly hard to be betrayed by someone you love. I held Stephanie's hand and spoke as gently as I could. I don't know why Henry did what he did, but as your sister, I can never forgive him, and I want to slap him right now. Stephanie, I don't want my dear sister to be with a man who would do this to her. I understand you might still have feelings for Henry, but you have a precious life in your belly that you need to take care of. Please think about everything that has happened, including this incident, and what you want for your future. Florence, whatever decision you make, I will be there to support you. I promise to be your strength. So, think about what's best for you and your baby. My words made Stephanie start crying again, and I gently rubbed her back. This wasn't just Stephanie's problem. With the child soon to be born, Henry would become a father. I thought about whether they could continue as a couple and a family, a decision I couldn't make for her. But this incident might have been the catalyst for some reflection. After a while, Stephanie spoke. I knew it wasn't normal, but I thought if I tried hard enough, he would change. Stephanie, who was gentle, shy, and hesitant in relationships, had trusted someone for the first time. Being treated so cruelly by that person, anyone would struggle to face reality. But I was wrong. Stephanie. Florence, I've decided. I don't need a father for my child if he can't cherish us. I will become strong for my child and me. Right. I will support you with all I have.
For now, come stay with us. You can live at our place until the baby is born. Then we'll see what to do about Henry.
I have a suggestion. I had an idea, which surprised Stephanie. If it makes him reflect, then it's worth trying. But she agreed.
Letting him realize his actions may be a good lesson for him.
After all he had put Stephanie through, it was time for Henry to face some consequences. We went to Stephanie's house to prepare. Henry had apparently left the back door of the garage unlocked, thinking Stephanie could leave on her own. Didn't he know a pregnant woman with panic attacks couldn't act calmly? Not checking on Stephanie before leaving for his business trip was careless. But above all, It was not how a husband should act towards his wife. I waited for morning to come, containing my anger. The next morning, Henry returned. I hid near the garage door.
Where the hell did she go?
Realizing Stephanie was nowhere to be found, Henry seemed a bit irritated. I quickly approached him from behind. They're both gone.
What? Florence, why are you here?
Why? Because of you. You abandoned Stephanie and her baby.
What?
I could see the surprise on Henry's face. I spoke in a low voice, filled with anger. You left them in the cold garage, didn't you? By the time I found out, it was already too late.
Wait, you're joking, right?
Henry was clearly flustered. Reed stepped in at that moment.
This is no joke. Why else would we be waiting here for you? Reed, no, that's not possible.
Do you have any idea how much Stephanie suffered? She must have been so cold and lonely, trying to protect her baby. I will never forgive you. Henry just stood there with wide eyes, clearly in disbelief. I let my tears flow, adding to the impact. Reed put his arm around my shoulder. It was time to deliver the final blow to Henry. Henry, I will never forgive you.
What? It was a lie, wasn't it? That's a terrible joke.
A joke? Stephanie isn't coming back. How are you going to take responsibility?
But she's right there. Henry, I understand you can't believe it, but you need to face reality.
Of course, Stephanie was really there, but we pretended not to see her, as if only Henry could. This was my strategy. I wanted Henry to fully understand and regret his actions that endangered both mother and child. So, we decided that Stephanie had died that day and came back as a ghost to get revenge on Henry. Henry, you're to blame. We will never forgive you. We will haunt you forever.
Ah!
Do you know how she felt being locked up here? Listen to me. We continued pretending not to see her, leaving Henry utterly confused. Stephanie approached Henry with a convincing performance that it was hard to believe that she was only acting. She moved towards him, wavering like a real ghost. Of course, since she wasn't actually a ghost, we made sure not to bump into her.
Stephanie, I'm sorry. It was my fault.
Henry, trembling in fear, started apologizing profusely. I spoke, adding to the pressure. No matter what you say, Stephanie isn't coming back. What's the point of apologizing now?
She's right there. Stephanie must hate me.
Yes, but it's okay. You will be haunted by me forever.
Ah!
At that moment, as Stephanie moved towards him, Henry screamed pathetically and fainted. We sighed, stopped the recording that captured everything that had happened, and carried Henry to a room. We had already contacted both our parents and Henry's parents to come over. The effect was better than expected. It almost made me laugh.
I did wonder if it was too much, though.
When I came up with this plan, I had discussed it with both our parents and Henry's parents. We knew Henry's parents well and trusted them, as they had always been kind to Stephanie. After explaining everything about what had happened and the garage incident, both sets of parents were shocked and concerned for Stephanie. Initially, my parents thought the ghost plan was excessive, but Henry's parents said,
"It's our son's fault. You did the right thing. We are okay with it."
It's because they said that we were able to go ahead with our plan. Seeing the video, Henry's parents apologized repeatedly. Soon, Henry was woken up for a discussion. He seemed to think it was all a dream, looking pale.
What? That was,
He mumbled, almost incoherently. Henry was sternly reprimanded by all the parents and was asked to agree to get a divorce with Stephanie. Initially, Henry was reluctant, but, "You put us in danger because of you, right? You don't want to experience the same thing as in your dreams, do you?" Stephanie's words made him quiet down. Additionally, he was asked to pay compensation for the divorce and future child support. Henry's parents took this incident seriously and decided to cut ties with him after ensuring the payments were made.
No, cutting ties? You did this to Stephanie. Correct your ways.
You tried to harm our grandchild. Understand that. You don't deserve to be a father. I can't believe our child did this.
Henry, begging and crying, couldn't argue anymore. The discussion concluded with him promising never to approach Stephanie again. Stephanie decided to live with us for a while and would move back to her parents' home after the baby was born.
Florence, Reed, I'm sorry for the trouble.
You were the brave one, Stephanie. Your acting was so convincing. Even if it was just acting, it was impressive.
I still lack confidence, and I'm not over everything, but I feel a bit stronger as a mother. Thank you.
I secretly felt proud as her sister. Stephanie later gave birth to a healthy boy. I was relieved that nothing had happened, but I shuddered to think what could have been if we hadn't gone to her house that day. Well, as long as they are safe now. Back at her parents' home, Stephanie, supported by them, is managing well with parenting. As a gentle and warm person like her, I'm sure her child will grow up to be kind. She's back to work now, looking happier in her daily photos. She's even getting along well with the man at work. I hope her emotional scars heal. I wish for nothing but happiness for my dear sister from now on.